Katie Taylor goes 3-0 over her longtime rival Amanda Serrano in their Trilogy fight. In this video, I'm giving you my instant reaction to the fight. I'm going to tell you how I scored the fight, who I think really won this fight, and whether or not it was a fair decision, as well as explaining what I saw tactically and technically that allowed the fight to play out the way it did, because this fight was a little bit different from the first two. Hello everyone, and welcome back to A Guy Called Henry. Guys, I hope you're all doing extremely well. I hope for those of you that stayed up and watched this fight that you did enjoy it, because it was a little bit of a different affair from the other two, shall we say. A little bit more technical, but also I think there was one fighter in there in particular that I feel was showing their age a little bit, and I definitely think that we could say there was some apprehension from both to make it the same kind of war and tear up that we saw in the first two fights. Just before I jump in, don't forget to bang a like on this video if indeed you do like what I have to say. Don't forget to subscribe to A Guy Called Henry if you're new, and get your comment in the comment section below. Did you think that Katie Taylor won this third fight against Amanda Serrano? Who do you think really won? Because that's the answer that we always look for in these post-fight reaction videos. Now, as I was watching this fight, I have to say, as a starter for 10, did not agree with the commentary really at all. They did call out a few things that I agree with, but by and large, I really felt that they were trying to paint certain narratives of this fight that just genuinely weren't there. Now, I thought that in this fight, Amanda Serrano came in with quite different tactics from what I'd seen from her previously, and there was one thing in particular she was doing that I found to be very, very strange. What she was doing was she was constantly putting the jab out there, leaving it out there, constantly throwing 1-2s into the fresh air. And actually, round one of this fight was one of the strangest rounds I've seen in quite a long time in boxing. It was very, very nervy and edgy from both women. Both of them were quite afraid of contact. Neither one of them wanted to step into the pocket. Neither one of them wanted to, take a gamble and try and land punches. And I do wonder if in this fight, based on the way it played out, there was a bit of a hangover from that second fight in particular where Amanda Serrano had that horrendous cut. Katie Taylor's face was pretty swollen as well. I can't remember if she was cut or not, but definitely her face was damaged. And that was a lot to do with the head clashes we saw last time. And I think there was a reluctance to engage in the pocket. There was a reluctance to lunge into attacks. And there was a lot of punching to make sure the other person couldn't close the space. In particular, Amanda Serrano was doing this. And I do think that there's something to be said for, and we should discuss whether or not Amanda Serrano has to a degree lost her timing and lost her ability to gauge the distance in a fight. I do think that by punching fresh air continuously, all you really do is create opportunities for your opponent to time you and to try and counter what you're doing, because at the end of the day, all that does is get you to tire. It might provide some mental comfort. It might give you a little bit of extra energy mentally because you feel safer when you're doing that. But the reality is you're working when you just don't need to work. It didn't really stop Katie Taylor coming forward. And actually, I thought Katie Taylor timed her shots really, really well in this fight. Now, I had Katie Taylor winning this fight very, very comfortably. I thought that she won this fight well. I'll give you my scorecard before the end of the video so you can see exactly what it was, but I definitely thought that Katie Taylor boxed extremely well in this fight. And Serrano said after the fight that she wanted to keep her range, use long punches a bit more, try and be a bit smarter, not make it a war, because she said clearly it didn't work in those other fights. So maybe a small admission from Serrano there that she knows that she didn't necessarily win those other two fights, despite feeling, in particular in the second fight, that she had been robbed, that she should have got the decision. Now, a lot of people scored that second fight for Serrano. I personally didn't. I thought Katie Taylor won the second fight as well. But I always think when a fighter comes in a particularly different manner, there's a bit of an acceptance, a bit of an admission that maybe they didn't do as well as they thought they did in that previous fight, or as well as they said they did. And I think in the way that I saw Amanda Serrano boxing in this one, it could be a mixture of things. It could be age. Look, she's 36 herself now, so she's coming towards the end of her career. It could be the fact that she just doesn't have the same gas tank anymore. But also, I do think there could be a degree of, I need to try a different way of winning, but also some apprehension because of the head clashes in the previous fight. I think that's definitely a component and a factor to consider. When you get to a certain point in your life, you don't want to be taking any more damage. And the amount of money these two have made from fighting each other will be really, really good, especially for the women's sport, which is very much still growing. But as for what I saw in there, Katie Taylor for me boxed brilliantly. And I think the big difference for me in this one with Taylor was that she used lateral movement very, very effectively. And it was very rare in this one that she'd get caught in the corner. Now, I think that's a mixture of two things. I do think she was making more effort to get out of those spaces, out of those positions. I think that she was really working hard to spin out and make sure that she would create an angle and get away and create the space again from Serrano. But also, I think because Serrano wasn't making it as scrappy and as much of a war, I do think it was a little bit easier for Katie Taylor to do this and actually to use her legs. I thought that for Katie Taylor, the money shot was that straight right hand, Time and time again, she was timing those counters. And actually, I did think that Serrano adapted quite well, started getting her head off the line quite well, reading that counter punch from Katie Taylor. But Katie Taylor was throwing really good reverse 1-2s. The straight right hand to the body was landing beautifully for her. And there was the check left hook as well was a shot that she had quite a bit of success with. I found it to be a very impressive boxing performance from Katie Taylor, and I thought it was disciplined. They kept out of trouble. The heads did, I think, clash once. Katie Taylor had a little bruise under her right eye, I believe it was. And whilst this fight was close, don't get me wrong, there wasn't really many rounds in there that were complete landslides. I definitely thought it was a clear win for Katie Taylor. So you can imagine that when I heard the judges suggest that this fight might be a draw, that this fight was a fight of picking what you like, I just outright disagree. I hear this all the time. Boxing's about what you like. Sometimes, yeah, you get fights like that. But most of the time, you can watch around and go, this fighter, landed more punches than this fighter. And it's that simple. Or this fighter landed the same number of punches, but this fighter landed the bigger, more clean, effective shots. Boxing's actually not as hard to score as a lot of people make out. There was a couple of rounds in there that were quite hard to split. I think there was 3 rounds that I found difficult. Round 1, because no one landed a single punch. I don't think you could give round 1 either way. I don't remember what the other 2 rounds were that I thought were toss-ups, but I still edged them for Katie Taylor, and I felt pretty happy doing so. But I also wouldn't have said, you're stupid if you gave them to Amanda Serrano, if that makes sense. But they weren't draws for me. I felt that Katie Taylor did slightly the better work. Now, to show you my scorecard, I scored the fight 98-93 for Katie Taylor. So round 1 was a draw. I gave round 2 to Amanda Serrano, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 to Katie Taylor. Round 8 for Serrano, and 9-10 for Katie Taylor. And even round 10 in particular, I thought that Serrano would really go for it in round 10. But actually, she didn't. She continued to box the same way. She continued to pace herself. I thought Katie Taylor was comfortable in round 10. And I found it really interesting that Serrano's corner were telling her she was winning the fight. I can't remember. It might have been around 5 or 6 when they said that to her. And it's something that I think needs to be looked at in boxing. I think a lot of these teams need to be looked at by the fighters, because at the end of the day, right, a lot of fighters are fueled by delusion. A lot of fighters are fueled by the confidence being bred by the idea that I am winning, that I'm the best, that I cannot lose. The problem with that delusion is that when it goes, so does your confidence. It's much better if your confidence is built from a place of realism, a place of being objective. And if you can do that, then, you're going to have such a stronger mindset. Now, what I would say is this. Firstly, you're robbing your fighter of the chance to go and win the fight, because it was very close. To say that she was winning was wrong in my opinion, but at best, she was in competitive rounds. And you could say, look, they're close, but we need these rounds. But the worst thing you could do was tell she was winning, because to me, she clearly wasn't winning. The commentators, the unofficial scorecard done by one of the pundits, I'm not sure who it was a draw, which I cannot see how you score this a draw. The absolute worst I could have this was probably for Katie Taylor by a round, maybe 2. That was the absolute worst. But I thought my scorecard was pretty good, 98-93. Someone in my chat had it 90... What did they have it? I think they had it a point wider. Everyone else was agreeing with me. I think someone else had it for Katie Taylor by 2. The other 2 judges had it 97-94. So it was 95-95, then official card, 95-95 on one of the judges' scorecards, and the other 2 had it 97-94. I'm perfectly happy with that scorecard. And look, at the end of the day, the right woman has won this trilogy, in my opinion. Katie Taylor, over the 3 fights for me, has been the better fighter. The head, luckily and thankfully, was not a component tonight, really. I think there was an odd head clash. The one that I saw in the slow motion replay, I actually thought was actually from Serrano more than from Taylor, so that was quite an interesting twist. But really, the head wasn't an issue tonight. I think these are 2 ladies that are an absolute credit to boxing, a credit to the women's sport. They've had 3 great fights together, and Katie Taylor comfortably won that fight tonight. I think Katie Taylor looks like she's got more to give in the sport. I'm not sure where she goes next, but I definitely don't think she needs to retire if she doesn't want to. I think there's plenty of boxing still to give from Katie Taylor. I thought the timing was great from her tonight. She was super sharp, really, really sharp, counterpunched really nicely, and I just thought, fair play, Katie Taylor, you boxed well. Whereas Amanda Serrano, I don't know whether she should continue, because I don't know if she can go in there and beat... I don't know if she can become a world champion. She's obviously still at a certain level, but I'm not saying she's shot, but I definitely think that the timing isn't what it was. The willingness to go in and make it a real scrap, which I think is probably her better attribute, her biggest strength is to be in a war, fight up close. I definitely think that isn't quite what it was either. Well, not based on tonight's performance anyway. So, long story short, for me, the right woman has won tonight. The right woman has won the trilogy. I was very impressed by Katie Taylor's performance, and the history books will say that it was 3-0 to Katie Taylor. I do think that it's not really giving credit to Serrano when you read that, the part that she played in this trilogy. There was a reason that there was a trilogy. There was a reason that we had these 3 fights. It's because that was the most exciting women's fight to make. Unfortunately for her, Katie Taylor is just a bit better. And people aren't going to like hearing that, but that's sport at the end of the day. You can be fantastic. In fact, I'll give you a great example if you're a Brit, or if you're a world tennis fan. Me and my mates were debating Andy Murray the other night, and we were saying, Andy Murray, fantastic, brilliant player, but you can't say he's a legend because, this was the argument, you can't say he's a legend because he only won a couple of slams, and you've got Djokovic, Nadal, Federer, who are all around at the same time and wipe the floor with him. The reality is that Andy Murray in another era would have been one of the greatest players of all time. Andy Murray is one of the greatest players of all time. It just so happens he's been in one of the hardest eras ever. And it's a similar thing with Amanda Serrano. She's just very unfortunate that Katie Taylor was around when she was, because she's just a bit better. And that's all there is to say about it, really. And it's you know, it's annoying. It doesn't give her the credit she deserves. But that's sport at the end of the day. You know, you can be really, really good and not be the best. And that's what I'd say about Amanda Serrano, whereas I think Katie Taylor is the greatest women's fighter of all time. And I thought tonight she was brilliant. I think that seeing her in there with in a trilogy fight with Chantel Cameron is a genuine option. Outside of that, guys, I'll be honest with you, I don't know much about the women's divisions. I'm not a massive expert. And as it grows in depth, I definitely am open to becoming more of a fan of the women's sport. But right now, it's not something I'm going to follow super closely. I can analyze it. I can jump in there and tell you what's happening in the ring. But in terms of context, in terms of the story, I'll just see where she goes next, and I may watch, because I did enjoy watching Katie Taylor tonight. It was a good boxing display, although it was definitely a much cagier fight. But guys, let me know what you thought in the comment section below. Were you happy with the scorecards tonight? What did you think? What did you think of the commentary? Because I just thought it wasn't right to say it was whatever you saw in there. I just think it was a clear Katie Taylor win. One of the judges giving it a draw, not for me. And overall, I just felt that the commentary just wasn't painting a picture of what was really happening in there. I don't like it. I've said this before. I don't like it when commentators try and paint a narrative. Just score the fight, call the fight. That's all we need from you. Maybe to the casual viewer, it's more enjoyable, but it doesn't help people to understand the sport better, which is actually the greatest barrier to entry. If you guys ever want to come and check out my lives, that's what we try and do. We try and call it fairly and accurately. And so hopefully that will help people to get into the sport more as well. Anyway, guys, as I say, I hope you've enjoyed this. Bang a like on the video, subscribe, comments in the comment section below. I will see you for Edgar Berlanga against Hamza Shiraz. I'm going to be live streaming for that one. And next weekend, of course, we've got Dubois Usyk, so lots of content to get through before that. But guys, I hope you've all enjoyed this. And as I always say, on to the next one.